5 or so months ago, I was showing off the 270 Winchester with a 1 in 10 twist, shooting the 165 grain AccuBond long range, getting very good accuracy, and I was able to consistently hit targets out to 800 yards with this. And I had a fun comment, and one that kind of, it really sparks today's conversation. A guy said, "Congrats. You turned your 270 Winchester into a mild 280 Remington." So in today's video, we're going to compare the 280 Remington to the 270 Winchester. We're going to see how they compare in performance. I'm going to show you how the 280 Remington does beat the 270 Winchester. But does anyone really care? To make a long story short, the 280 Remington was kind of a marketing disaster, a real big fail by Remington, which is kind of weird because during the time, Remington's glory years were around the time this came out. You know, they had the huge hit of the 7mm Remington mag, which most likely helped kill off this cartridge. But there was plenty of things that Remington didn't do so well. First off, when it first introduced, the loads were extremely watered down compared to like a 30-06 or a 270, which this basically has the same case as them. So there wasn't really much of an advantage to switch from your trusty old 270 up to a 280 Remington because the 270 was faster at that time. Now, years later, Remington fixed that, but overall it was kind of a marketing disaster for the 280 Remington. Let's take a close look at each of these cartridges. The 270 Winchester is on the left, 280 Remington on the right. You know, the big difference I see here is the shoulder isn't as tall on the 270 Winchester, meaning it's not as long. And so there is a much longer neck in the 270 Winchester than the 280 Remington. Now, this is a total guess, but just looking at it, it does look like the 280 Remington could hold just a little bit more powder, but I'm sure it's not that big of a difference. As for cartridge overall length, they're actually identical. As you can see, they look very much the same in length. I think another thing that really hurt the 280 Remington when it was versing the 270, trying to get into the market, is look at the difference between a 7mm bullet and a 270 bullet. Honestly, it might be really hard to even tell them apart. Can you guys tell which one's which? The one on the left is the 7mm, the one on the right is the 270. There is not a big difference in diameter of bullet between a 7mm and a 270. Now let's talk performance, and I'm going to use hand-loaded data like I usually do. So you could make an argument, and it'd be a solid one. In versatility, the 270 actually beats the 280, at least in factory ammo offerings. So yeah, you could make an argument that it's a little more versatile. However, the 280 Remington is able to shoot bigger bullets and where the 270 can't. So I don't know, it's 50-50 on which one's really more versatile. If you're a hand loader, 280 Remington. If you don't hand load, you're going to have a lot more ammo options in 270. Let's look at the data for the 270 first. We're going to start with a 140 grain bullet. And a couple things I want you to pay attention here. Let's just look at the common BCs for a 270 and a 140 grain. You're seeing mid 0.45, so it's not bad, not great. Then you top out in your velocity just a little over 3,000 feet per second. Now let's go ahead and also go up to a 150 grain. BC is, other than the AccuBond long range, is around 500. It's not bad. And your velocity tops out a little over 29. So how does this compare to the 280? 80 with a 140 grain. Check out the BC. It's basically the same. Again, these two calibers are so close to each other. There's not going to be a huge difference. So let's go out and see how fast it can go. 3150. So the 270 was maxing out a little over 3,000 feet per second. Up to the 150 grain, and look at that, the BC. Even though this is a wider bullet, it should have a lower BC. It's basically the same. Other than the long range, there is a little bit of an advantage for the 270 150 ABLR, but not a huge difference. But you're going to get 100 feet per second more in the 280 Remington. And then the one nice thing about the 280 Remington is you're not limited to just a 150 grain bullet. 160, a little over 2,900, 168, 2850. So as a hand loader, as I said, the 280 is more versatile. It's also faster with basically the same BC bullets. Okay, we're going to look at the ballistic charts, and we are going to use a 150 grain AccuBond long range for both 270 Winchester and 280 Remington. So in the 270 Winchester, it has a BC of .591, really good for a 150 grain bullet. This is probably 270's best bullet for long range capability. And at 2,900 feet per second, it has 2,802 foot-pounds of energy, and out to 400 yards, it's still going 2,300 feet per second and 1,764 foot-pounds, and only 25.5 inches of drop. With the 280 Remington loaded with the ABLR, it has a decent BC of .546, and it's going 100 feet per second faster. So your energy is almost 200 more foot-pounds at the muzzle. But let's see what it does out to 400 yards. It's going just a little bit faster than the 270 at 400, 2,341 feet per second. And, well, I don't know, it's probably 50 more foot-pounds of energy than the 270 Winchester, and an 1.5 inch difference in drop. So technically, the 280 Remington is definitely more powerful. But, is any of the animals going to know? No. For just a moment, let's put aside the commercial success of both of these, or lack thereof, for the 280 Remington. Which one has the most potential? I'm going to have to side with the 280 Remington if you're wanting to shoot bigger bullets. If you're wanting to shoot lighter bullets, I honestly would probably go 270. Now, if it was between these two cartridges, which one would I choose? Well, I've done it already. I have a 270 Winchester, and it's for my son, not really me. And if I am ever going to get a cartridge that is similar to 280 or the 270, well, it's going to be the 280 Ackley Improved, because it beats out the 280 Remington and definitely beats the 270 Winchester. And I just think it's a really cool looking cartridge and really unique. Yeah, 280 AI is my official pick.